this homeschool video on my own. When I first began homeschooling so many years ago, I feel like it was forever ago. It was just like 5 or 6 years ago. Bella was 3. One of the things that I really thought was important was that we had boundaries in our school day and our regular routine. So I, of course, am a huge advocate for homeschooling, an organization thing. We've all been there and had that conversation, right? Like, do they really need to be socialized in a school setting, or, can you be socialized in whatever? Okay, I'm not going to even go there because we've all had that conversation with people. But the one area where I really feel like homeschooling is an injustice to our kids is that in this fast-paced world, where we are not, as moms, necessarily just homeschooling. We're doing a million other things too, and on a busy schedule, is that in this crazy fast-paced world, our kids are not getting somebody with a fresh perspective. They have the same environment all day and the same tired person all day. And so if you're anything like me, you're tired. And so I just thought that was an injustice to my kids. I didn't want to have the same exhausting, overwhelming expectations of them from the minute they woke up till the minute they went to bed, because I knew that was a recipe for disaster. So I didn't want to hold them to a certain standard, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, of course, we don't hit during school and we don't hit after school. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about maybe emotional responses and behavior, things along those lines. And so sometimes when somebody is misbehaving during the school day, their reasons are different than misbehaving outside of that. So for example, if a child has an attitude about doing chores in the late afternoon, the reason behind that is probably a lot different than if they are short and bitter and snappy when you're doing math. And so I would like to have different boundaries and different expectations and different punishment, for those circumstances. And again, just like I said in the last video, that involves emotionally removing myself from the situation, but also seeing it in a lot more objective manner, just because when you're homeschooling, again, you have to remember that this is their first time learning something, and even though you've been doing this for years. So maybe they're struggling with schoolwork, or they are tired, or it's confusing, or something's new, or they're sick of it, or they already know it. Maybe it's not just that it's new and confusing, but it's not necessarily always just outright defiance. I think a lot of what they do, even outside of school, isn't necessarily just defiance, but we tend to see it that way. But specifically with schoolwork, a lot of it, in my experience, has to do with struggles beyond defiance or the parent-child situation. So if my kid went to school and they got a teacher who was held to a certain standard, and was fresh and happy every morning, they would probably benefit from that versus me just drilling it into them all day long and being tired and worn out and not fresh and excited to see them every single morning. So I think that it's only fair to them if for my kids, if I have just separate boundaries for the school day. The expectations are different in our home for school than they are for the remainder of the day. So I'm gonna actually show you some specific details that I didn't, when I was doing our home discipline video, it wasn't necessarily specific because there's like 3 million different situations you can come to every single day in your home. But in school, it's pretty much one of two things. It's either they did their work, they didn't do their work, they did it with a good attitude, or they did it with bad attitude. And so here's what we use in our home. I know I've showed you guys our blue ribbons before. Now the idea, or just even the name Blue Ribbon, I got from a farmhouse full years ago. I will link that video here if I can find it, but we don't use them the same way she does. I just liked Blue Ribbon instead of ticket or dollar or whatever reward system you use. I liked the idea of Blue Ribbon. And now I put Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord. And that's just something that I wanted to implement with their schoolwork, even if it doesn't make sense to them, just do it with all your heart. So the Blue Ribbons come as a reward for completing their schoolwork each day and completing their school contributions. And if you're not familiar with contributions, I'll also link that up here. Contributions for us are their chores, basically, their daily contributions to our family and our home. So they'll get one for completing their schoolwork, and they'll get one for completing their contributions. And so, and again, like the last video, the follow through is so important. So if they don't complete their schoolwork or if they don't do their chores, I guarantee you that 1 or 2 instances of them not receiving both Blue Ribbons will be enough that they will avoid, at least for my kids, what we call speeding tickets. So these speeding tickets are very helpful. I have only had to use them a total of 3 times in a year. And that was 1 time for each child, actually, now that I think about it. So the idea behind this came from my son goes to like speech therapy, occupational therapy, more of like an auditory processing kind of red flag that we noticed a couple of years ago, and it's been immensely helpful. And so one of the things they talk about there is they kind of refer to my kids' mind as an engine. So is your engine slow? Is your engine running fast? And so from that, I got the idea of a speeding ticket. And so I'll give them 1 warning, just like a police officer will give you 1 warning if they're nice, that you're speeding before you get a ticket. So I'll give them a warning. If you continue responding this way, if you continue speaking this way, if you continue throwing my kids, sometimes if they really don't want to do an assignment, they'll be like throwing their body around or like throwing their pencil around, and that's distracting for the rest of the classroom, right? So one of the things that I will do is I'll say, if you continue that behavior, you're going to get a speeding ticket. That's enough for them. But if they do continue it, I will hand them a speeding ticket. And so these are the chores that they just don't want around the house. They don't want, we don't regularly assign. So for example, sorting socks. So these speeding tickets say, stop, complete the following chore, pay 5 Blue Ribbons, or spend 15 minutes in bed. And so they can choose what they'd rather do, but we have sort socks, rinse out the garbage cans, wipe down the inside of the refrigerator, mom's pick, sweep the patio, clean the van, those kinds of things that nobody really wants to do. They also don't want to pay me 5 Blue Ribbons, and they really definitely don't want to go spend 15 minutes laying in their bed. So these have been helpful because just I don't want to say threat, but just the idea of having to do one of those 3 things. And I still give them a choice. I mean, if they want to pay me Blue Ribbons, we can just move right along with the day, but that gives them a little bit of responsibility and ownership for that behavior as well, and it definitely helps them remember to not do that again. The other term I use often in the school day is respect the environment. So if the baby's napping, then they need to respect the environment. And it's different from use your inside voice, use your outside voice. It's respect the environment, because the environment inside can change depending on the situation. If it's time for us to be reading, respect the environment. That person over there is trying to read. You may be struggling with a word, but you don't need to be screaming and yelling. It's respect the environment at this point in the day. The environment is a quiet, calm environment for reading. If the baby's napping, same thing. We need to respect the environment. If one child is struggling, or say they're mispronouncing something while we're doing a lesson, or they're feeling confused about something, and another child really is struggling to not laugh, respect the environment, please. And that is just, it gives them, again, a little bit of ownership about their outward behavior, it's, okay, I need to check myself. What's the environment? What's going on? It gives them an awareness of what's going on. And so in general, my hope is that as we continue to use the phrase, respect the environment, that they learn to assess the room and the situation before they behave a certain way, whether that be in our school or in our general life. So there is that. And again, to me, that helps me, because sometimes I'll want to say respect the environment, and I realize there's no reason for them to be quiet. There's no reason for them to not be goofy. It's a normal lunch hour. What's the environment that I'm trying to create? Sometimes it's just me trying to control, and I don't want the noise or something, but it's not an appropriate time for me to make them be quiet. So there's that. And then the other thing with the blue ribbons is that it really gives them a lot of ownership of the school day. When I tell them I'm starting a lesson, I'm starting the lesson. So a lot of times I will sit and I will start reading to an empty room, because they were not there when I told them they needed to be there. And therefore, they don't know what the instructions are for the lesson, and they can't complete the lesson. And so it's not my fault that they didn't complete their lesson that day and they didn't get a blue ribbon that day. It was their decision to not be where I said when I asked them to be there. So sometimes, yes, I do sit in an empty room and I read to no one, and hopefully when they hear me reading, they'll come and be able to catch 3/4 of what the assignment is. But if they don't, they cannot complete their work that day, and so in turn they don't get a blue ribbon that day. So those are generally the 3 ways that we handle discipline, rewards within our school day. And the last thing I want to say is that if you have a hard time controlling yourself during a school day, for me, there might be reasons hormonally, or maybe you're exhausted from being up all night with a baby. But there are days when I wake up and I know that my kids just don't have a fair shot that day, because for one reason or another, I am feeling it before the day even starts. Open a window and see how easy it is at that point to yell at your kids. Try to bring some accountability in to it, whether it's somebody you call and say, hey, I'll call my mom or my mother-in-law. Do you guys want to come over for this math lesson today? If I feel like having somebody else in the house will be helpful, or changing the plans. If you recognize that you need the help that day, there are steps you can take to keep yourself accountable and not just make it an unfair situation for your kids. So yeah, for me, a lot of times it's opening a window. And I actually told John before I made this video, I don't even know if I want to say that, because I don't want people to think I'm just yelling all the time and I have to open windows so I don't freak out at my kids. But the reality is, we're tired. We do this 24/7, and if you need to open a window to just stay calm for no other reason than just having good behavior, even though your heart's not feeling it that day, you need to open a window. I mean, our kids are homeschooled, and so that means that they don't see a lot of other adults. Maybe you're the only adult they're going to see for 3 days in a row, and that's, to me, it can make me nervous for some kids if I think that okay, so this is going to sound horrible. I don't even know if I'll put it in the video, because I don't know anybody who I would worry for, but I just think in general that's an unfair situation for kids if the parents have a incredible lack of self-control. Okay, the phone died, so I'm just using another phone, so hopefully you can still see me. But yeah, so just in general, if you need to get some accountability, get some accountability. Have someone you can call, open a window, do what you need to do, go for a walk. But for me, if I ever feel many days in a row that it's an uphill battle, or I just can recognize that I'm not really feeling, it's not so easy to stay cool, calm, and collected and kind to my kids. I have to step back and evaluate my lifestyle, the pace. I need to figure out a way to slow down, because a lot of a lot of discipline and self-control is nearly impossible without a slow and steady spirit and soul. So that is what I have to say. That's my thoughts and my ideas about discipline and structure in homeschool. If you guys have any system that works for you, I would love for you to share it. Again, because I did kind of split this video up, I want this to be a let's talk video. I want this to be not just me telling you how to do something, but I want to gain insight and ideas and encouragement from one another. So please share in the comments below and communicate with each other what works for you. If you have any questions, I'm sure there are people who would have an appropriate answer for that. So go ahead and leave comments below, and I will see you later. Bye.